midnight, May 8th. Surrender to the Russians was not an option for soldiers whose collar patch bore the twin runes of the SS. A week after his surgery, a chubby American major had showed up at his bedside, a little too solicitous of his good health. He'd asked how his kidney was and confided that a man didn't really need a spleen. All the while, Seyss had known what he was after. So when finally the major demanded his name, he gave it, voluntarily. He didn't wish to be found in 2 months' time, cowering in his lover's boudoir or hiding beneath his neighbor's haystack. Peeling back his hospital smock, he had lifted his left arm so that the SS blood group number tattooed on its pale flank could be read. The American had checked the group number against that written on his clipboard, then, as if declaring the patient cured, smiled and said, "Eric Siegfried Seyss, you have been identified by the Allied powers as a war criminal and are subject to immediate transfer to an appropriate detention facility where you will be kept in custody until the time of your trial." He didn't provide any specifics as to the nature of the crimes or where they were alleged to have taken place, on the Dnieper, the Danube, the Vistula, or the Omlev, though Seyss acknowledged it might have been any one of those places. The major had simply produced a pair of handcuffs and locked his right hand to the bed's metal frame. Recalling the moment, Seyss paused to light a cigarette and stare at the fiery silhouette of the mountains surrounding him. He considered the charge again and shook his head. War crimes. Where did the war end and the crimes begin? He didn't loathe himself for acts from which other, lesser men might have shrunk. As an officer who had sworn his loyalty to Adolf Hitler, he had simply done as he'd been told and acted as honorably as circumstances did or did not allow. If the Allied powers wanted to try him, fine. He'd lost the war. What else could they do? Dismissing his anger, Seyss cut behind the hall, then traversed a dirt infield littered with bales of firewood. Dusk brought quiet to the camp. Prisoners were confined to their barracks until dawn. GIs freed from duty hustled into town for a late beer. Those staying behind gathered in their quarters for heated games of poker and gin rummy. He walked slower now, guarding the shambling pace of a man with nowhere to go. Still, a sheen of perspiration clung to his forehead. He ventured a glance at the wristwatch taped high on his forearm. 3 minutes past 9. Tonight, everything would hinge on timing. 50 feet away, a lone sentry rounded the corner of the latrine. Spotting Seyss, he called, "Hey, Fritz, get over here. Time for bed check. What are you doing out?" Seyss approached the GI, pleased he was precisely on schedule. "Just have to make a pee," he answered in English. "Plumbing's messed up and gone to hell. No hard feelings, though. It was Ivan's doing, not yours." Born of an Irish mother and a German father, he'd grown up speaking both languages interchangeably. He could recite Yeats with a Dubliner's impish brogue and quote Goethe with a Swabian's contemptuous slur. "Just give me your pass and shut up." Seyss retrieved a yellow slip from his pocket and handed it over. The pass cited an irregularly functioning kidney as grounds for permission to visit the latrine at all hours. The sentry studied the slip, then pointed at his watch. "Bedtime, Fritz. Curfew in 5 minutes." "Don't worry, Joe. I'll be back in plenty of time for my story. And don't forget a glass of warm milk. I can't sleep without it." The sentry handed him back the pass, even managing a laugh. "Just make it snappy." Seyss said, "Yes, sir," then moved on toward the latrine. Americans were easily seduced by foreigners who could speak their language, and he'd been quick to take advantage of their garrulousness, using any pretext to ask carefully disguised questions about the camp's security. What he'd learned was useful to a man with an eye bent on escape. 24 soldiers were posted on night watch, 1 in each of the 11 towers that ringed the camp, 10 walking the area perimeter, and 3 in the camp commander's office, located just inside the gate. Only 7 of the 150-man camp garrison had been in Germany longer than 3 months. The rest were replacement troops, green soldiers who had never fired a gun in anger. Most interesting, Colonel Janks, the reed-thin martinet who commanded the camp, had forbidden the use of the Krieg lights mounted in the watchtowers except in